Gabe Debenedetti is national political reporter for Politico, joins us now. Okay, Gabe, I'm curious about the 800,000 Dreamers. What will be their immediate course of action, especially are there deportations coming? And if you receive Daca permits, are they still valid?
Well, it's a great question. A lot of them don't really know right now. No one, it seems, is going to be immediately deported. And obviously, one of the things that the Trump administration said here is that there's going to be 6 months before there are obvious changes. But a real concern for a lot of the Daca recipients is that the government has their information. In order to sign up for the benefits involved in this program, they had to give the government their information. So the government knows that these are undocumented people that have been in the past protected. So there's a lot of uncertainty for these folks. And obviously, what they're going to be hoping for is that Congress can find some sort of fix. There's no mass deportations planned right now, nothing of that sort, and Trump is obviously not eager to have that happen, but there's not much clarity going around.
You know, there's a lack of consensus within the GOP about health care. Republicans are divided on Daca, so is a legislative solution really feasible?
Yeah, that's the big question over Capitol Hill right now. Congress had already had its hands full, but now they basically have to, over the next 6 months, come up with a solution for this. But as you said, the GOP is totally divided. There are some folks who have in the past tried to pass some sort of thing that would, move toward comprehensive immigration reform that would offer protections to people like this under the Daca program. Most Democrats support that, but what's not clear at all is how many House or Senate Republicans would go along with it. That is the big question.
So Congress, they've got a pretty packed agenda already, raising the debt ceiling, Harvey relief bill, budget bill. Where do you see Daca fitting in when you talk about the priorities?
Well, it's a great question. They have to keep the government open. They have to pass funding for Harvey. They have to raise the debt ceiling. These are all super important, very, very short-term problems. But President Trump has said basically, listen, Congress, you have 6 months for this Daca, to find a Daca fix. One thing that was pretty interesting is if you looked at a lot of the statements that came out from Republican members of Congress over the last few hours, a lot of them sort of said, listen, we want to find a solution here, but we need to know what the White House would be willing to sign off on. So, for example, Senator Marco Rubio said it's that we don't have any time to waste. We have to find a solution right now, but we need to know that what we sign, the president will approve, because the worst case scenario for the Senate and the House would be passing something that the White House then vetoes. So it's a very delicate situation. They know they have to get going on it ASAP. They just don't know exactly what that's going to look like.
Gabe, you mentioned a delicate situation. We know the president's meeting with congressional leaders this week, including Democrats tomorrow. What do you think the Dems will be pushing for when they meet with him?
Well, the Dems essentially want to slow down his agenda entirely. They want to keep the government open, though, and they want to raise the debt ceiling. So, for them, it's basically about harm minimization at this point. But this Daca development definitely gives them something to talk about. What they're going to say to the White House likely is something along the lines of, help us find a way to keep the protections for these 800,000 young people who want to be Americans. Obviously, the White House is not necessarily clear on where it stands on that, but if you're Chuck Schumer or you're Nancy Pelosi, this is a push that you're very eager to make. These are people that the Democrats are basically unified behind.
So what's next, Gabe? What are you watching for when it comes to the Daca dialogue?
I think what we're going to have to see is a lot of statements from, in particular, Republican House members who are further on the right side of that caucus, and a lot of Republican senators. A lot of Republican senators have said that they do want to line up and try to find a way to fix this problem. Look at Lindsey Graham, for example. Look at John McCain. Look at even Marco Rubio. But the real question is what's going to happen to some of the ones who are further on the Tea Party side of things. We haven't heard a ton from Ted Cruz, for example. We haven't even heard a ton from Mitch McConnell. So what we're going to look for, at least what I'm going to be looking for, is what a lot of these senators say their next steps are. Are they going to be meeting with other senators to talk through solutions? Are they going to be meeting with the White House? Or, which is another possibility entirely, are they essentially going to say, we'll deal with this once the House does. This is not what we're looking for right now. What remains to be seen, in other words, is really where on the priority list this lands. For Democrats, it's at the top, but as we well know, Democrats don't control Congress.
That's right. And do you get a sense, I hate to use this word, but do you think that the president might use Daca as a negotiating chip for other political legislation that he wants passed?
Well, one thing that's very interesting about the way that he's been handling this is that he basically has been acting like he doesn't want to deal with it at all. He didn't make the announcement today, Jeff Sessions did, and he basically said, listen, this is on Congress now. It's possible that he could use it, as you suggested, like a political football and say, I'll sign this if you sign off on border wall funding, for example. But we haven't yet seen that, and I don't want to speculate too far on what the White House could or could not do. For now, what seems quite clear is that the White House acknowledges that this DACA problem is a real political problem for Trump. He doesn't want to be seen as being unnecessarily cruel to these 800,000 people. At the same time, he does have to fulfill promises to his base that want him essentially to deport a lot of these folks. So what he was doing is trying to push it off for now.
And not a lot of days to negotiate and get things passed by the end of the year, right, Gabe?
That's exactly right. There's basically no time left. There are very few days in session in Capitol Hill. There are a lot of big markers coming up. Obviously, there's a Senate election in Alabama that a lot of people are going to be watching closely to sort of gauge where the direction of politics is going to go towards or against the White House, towards or against Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. There are a lot of really interesting inflection points coming up, but there's just not that much time before December.
All right, Gabe Debenedetti, thanks for joining us, Gabe.
Thank you.